Welcome to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad Zoom Call. Tonight's topic is teen fathering. If you're looking for a unique gift for your dad for Father's Day, or for a gift for the holidays, or his birthday for that matter, consider the Great Dad Coin, which is something that is a keepsake that your dad could have for years and years. I personally carry mine with me on a daily basis, just as a reminder about my relationship with my kids. And what I find inspiring about the coin is that it has some messaging on it, which is the dads are present physically, emotionally, and spiritually in their child's life. So to get information on the Great Dad Coin, or to order a coin for your father figure, simply go to 21stcenturydads.org. And we're really lucky to have one of the premier teen father leaders in the country, Shanne Sowards of the Squires program in Portland, Oregon, and one of the young dads who's gone through the Squires program, Andrew Martinez. So the format of tonight's presentation will be that I'll ask both of them to make a brief self-introduction, and then I'll ask Shanne to share his backstory with us. We'll talk about the Squires program, and then we'll give Andrew an opportunity to share what his experience has been with the Squires program. So Shanne, great to see you. Thanks for being with us. So why don't you share with our listening audience or our viewing audience your backstory, where you were born, where you grew up, and what led to becoming a teen father yourself?
So I was born in Portland, Oregon. I had a mom and a dad, and they were married. And then when I was 17 months old, my mom left. The story goes that she just took me to her mother's house, my grandma, and said, "Hey, Mom, will you watch Shanne?" And she said, "Sure." And then nobody heard from her for like 2 weeks. She just disappeared. From then on, I lived with my dad and my grandma. I bounced back and forth. There were times that my dad he struggled to provide, and when he did, instead of taking me to his parents, he would actually take me to my mom's parents, and I would live with them for here and there. So I just bounced back and forth from this little town called Canby and another town called Milwaukee, and I just kind of went back and forth all my life. I would, like, every other year I would live with one or the other, and typically I would only live with grandma for I would guess 6 months or something like that, and it was often in the summer. So I was changing school in the middle of the school year almost every year. And then so I was just kind of doing that back and forth most of my life. And my freshman year, so at this point, my freshman year of high school, I went to 3 different high schools. And my third high school, I met this girl named Wendy, and she ran away from home. And then she came and lived with me and my family for the summer. And before school started, she was pregnant, and we were 15, and it was just quite the journey, trying to figure it out. I'd made a promise to myself when I was young that I would not repeat what my mother did to me, that I would always be there for my kid. I would never run out. But I didn't realize I was going to have to cash in on that when I was 15 years old. So here I was 15. I couldn't get a job, because you can't really get a job in Portland, right, unless you're 16. And I was just struggling to try to figure it out. Before too long, my relationship fell apart, and not really. I mean, it wasn't a great, healthy relationship because we were teenagers, but also I was pretty selfish. I still wanted that typical high school experience, and she wasn't going to school with me anymore, and I was getting a lot of attention. So I broke up with her, And that made things even more complicated because, you know, I didn't know how to parent and not be in a relationship. Like, and the when I lived with my dad, we'd always lived in these poor apartment complexes and stuff. And almost all my friends just had their mom. They didn't have a dad. They didn't have a family relationship. They would just have the mom. And I was actually kind of the weird kid because I just had a dad. And so I'd never actually seen what it looked like to be a parent and not be in a relationship. So I tried. I did what I thought was right. I finally did get a job, and I worked 40 hours a week, and I paid child support. And unfortunately, during this time, my parents became homeless. So I had to fend for myself as well. So then I was couch surfing, and I was paying somebody rent to sleep on their couch. And I was doing just kind of motioning through. But a lot of times, the couch that I was staying on wasn't a good place to bring my daughter. So I wasn't seeing my daughter a whole bunch. And funny thing was everyone told me I was doing a great job. You know, it's 92, 93, and you know, teen pregnancy is on the rise. And, you know, the common theme was the dads didn't stick around. But because I was paying child support and seeing my daughter a little bit, everyone told me, you know, hey, good job, way to go. You know, put me on a soapbox, tell me how awesome I am. And then midway through my senior year, I met this guy named Ben who offered to be my mentor. And I didn't know what mentoring was at the time. And he told me he was going to buy me a soda once a week. And I was like, well, I like soda, especially free soda. So I said yes. And we hung out a little bit. And a lot of times we talked about nothing. You know, I remember he drove a Saturn. He had long hair. He wore Birkenstocks. He had a beard. He was kind of Jesus-like. He listened to sports radio. I thought that was really odd because why would you listen to people talk on the radio? Which I sadly admit that I do that now. And he, you know, what was really interesting about that relationship was like, he was the only person in my life that was just checking in on me. And at this point, my father had moved to California, and I was completely on my own. I was just grinding. I'd finally found myself in a place where I could actually bring my daughter on weekends. So it was every other week. Weekend I would have her. But I was still working 40 hours a week and getting help support from the community. And he helped give me just small little tools to, like, I didn't know it at the time, but that was really going to help me long term. One of the things he did is he talked to me about child support one day. He asked me, he says, do you pay child support? And I said, well, yeah, I pay child support. He says, well, tell me what that looks like. So, well, she meets me on payday, and we go across the street, and I cash my check, and I give her cash, you know, and then I stood there and waited for him to pat me on the back and tell me how great I was. And he was like, well, it's great that you do that, but you're certainly not protecting yourself or your daughter. And, you know, the macho part of me was just like, yeah, tell me I'm not protecting my daughter. And it really frustrated me. I remember that emotion even still to this day. And he says, well, no, but seriously, what if she says you never pay child support? I'm like, well, we don't get along, but she wouldn't, you know, she wouldn't do that to me. He says, well, what if? Well, something happened. I'm sure I did something stupid, and she basically threatened me. And so I thought to myself, well, maybe she would do that. So I said, hey, Mr. Mentor, what's this first step? And he's like, I didn't want you to get a checking account. You know, at this point, I had my job for about 2 years, and I was like paying a fee, I think, to cash my checks because I didn't have a bank account. And so he said, let's get a checking account. And so I got a checking account, and he says, I want you to start writing her checks. So I started writing her checks. Um, and she showed up to get child support that day, and I wrote her a check, which really upset her, because, of course, in immature fashion, I did not explain to her that this was going to happen. I just said, surprise, I'm not giving you cash, here's a check, which actually created a barrier because she didn't have a checking account either. And then that created another conflict. And then so I said, okay, you said there were steps. What's step 2? And he's like, I want you to just pay the state of Oregon directly. And it's because we were both minors. It was kind of a pass through. They were just going to record it and then send it right to her. So it was like a 3-day turnaround. And I was like, okay. And again, I did not communicate this with her. And so when she came, she's like, I got my checking account, I'm here to get the check. I'm like, oh, well, I already mailed it. You'll get a check from the state in a couple days. Did not go over real well. Not one of my finer moments. Fast forward a few years later, I have Wendy's falls on hard times, and she's getting TANF. She's getting support. And, when they're getting support, government says, well, somebody's got to be financially responsible for that kid. So they come after me, and they send me a letter saying they're going to take 25% of everything I make and all this other stuff. And I was fortunate to be able to say, actually, if you look at case number XYZ, you'll see I pay child support, and I've been paying child support all this time, and it all went away. And I remember at that time thinking, I'm so glad I got listened to that guy who bought me sodas. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any. I wouldn't have even had an account with the state, let alone had checks. I wouldn't have any proof that I'd ever done that. So over the years, I'd tell people about this guy, and was like, man, if I ever won $1 million, this is what I'd do. I would start a program to support young dads. I'd buy them sodas. And people would always tell me I should, but I was like, who am I? I'm just a knucklehead who knocked somebody up when I was 15. So yeah, I mean, that's basically the catalyst of why I started it. I just wanted to buy young guys sodas and help point them in directions to help them, overcome those hurdles.
Well, thanks for the backstory. It's a really moving story. And one of the things I love about you, Shanne, is the authenticity and owning your responsibility, right? And it wasn't easy. You didn't really know a lot. And what's comes to mind is that, the male brain is known to be fully formed at age 25. So you had 3/5 of a developed brain when you became a dad. And I don't mean to be judgmental when I say that. I'm just saying you had another 10 years to go from the time you became a dad till the time that your brain was fully formed. And then you were very fortunate to have Ben, the fellow that you made reference to, the mentor, come into your life and, just be present, right? And then, like you said, gave you some really important advice, basic advice, checking account, be aware of what the system is in the state of Oregon. So a number of years goes by, you get married, you have more children, and I'm wondering what was it? Because I remember you telling the story previously in episode number 12 of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. So you were right there close to the very beginning when we started doing these podcasts. I can remember like it was yesterday, being there in Portland with you and Kwame and some other guys that we did that Cycled on Father Absent event. And then we took some time to record your interview afterwards. So recall for our viewers the situation once you were married and the sort of signs, if you will, that led to
literal signs. So I was at this point in my life. My oldest daughter had moved out. She was in college, and I'm looking at the one that I had when I was 15, and just going, we have a good relationship, but it's certainly not as deep as I want it to be. And I have two more in home. I think they were in junior high school, maybe early high school. No, probably junior high school when I first started this. But I'm just going, I really need to, like, I was in sales and I need to change something in my life, because I was, last month's hero, always chasing the dollar, the next sale, the da 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 da. I was just so consumed by making more money to be able to provide that I really lost focus on, like, being present for my kids. And I thought, I need to fix this. So I had taken a job at a chemical plant, so I could just work 40 hours a week, and that's it, right? I'd go home, I'd go to work, do my job, and then come home and do, During the same time, I was also in a Bible study on a Saturday morning, and we were doing the book by John Eldredge called Wild at Heart. And one day there was the question was, if you had no hurdles, no obstacles, they were all removed, all your excuses were taken away, and if you truly believed God had your back, what would you be doing with your life? And the guys all in the meeting kind of shared, their ideas or whatever. And I reluctantly shared mine. I was like, well, I would start a mentoring program for teen fathers. And I told them about Ben and about how he, bought me sodas and how that affected my life. And they were all like, next thing I know, it's not a Bible study anymore. It is a business planning meeting. I've got a piece of paper still somewhere that actually has a bubble chart, this flow chart of, oh, you got to do this and you got to do this and all these different things. And I let them go on for like 15, 20 minutes. And then finally just said, okay, stop, guys. Like, it's great that you think I should do this, but I'm just a knucklehead who had a baby when I was 15. And I'm not your Huckleberry. I just started a new career. Like, and I'm like, but you should. I'm like, you're not listening to the question. Like, I have hurdles, I have obstacles, I have plenty of excuses of why I'm not qualified to do this. So I'm driving home in my car that day, and it's only like a mile away from my house. And I look up and there's this big billboard. Now, it hadn't just appeared, it had been there for months. And it's this picture of David Foster, and it just says mentoring and big in red and white letters. And I just remember looking skyward going, leave me alone. Like, I'm not doing this. And I get home and I tell my wife, she goes, how's Bible study? It's like, oh man, it happened again. She's like, the mentoring thing? Because it's not the first time I'd had the conversation. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, let's do it. I'm like, nobody's listening to the question. Like, you're all nuts. So fast forward a couple of months, like a month and a half of this new job. I told them that I wanted to be worker bee. I wanted to be present at work. And then when I get home, I just forget about it. Like, whatever you need me to do. But turns out I'm kind of an ask why 5 times type of guy. And like, I spend more time with you than I do my own family. So I want to know your middle name, your last name, like, what are your hobbies? How can we make this place better? Let's make this a family atmosphere. That is not what they wanted. They just wanted a yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir guy. And so I lost my job. So when I lost my job, I filed for unemployment, and I get a letter from unemployment that says, Mr. Sowards, we don't think you're going to get another job in the chemical industry, but we think you should apply for this program, the SEA program. It's called Self-Employment Assistance, which allows you to collect unemployment benefits while you start a small business. And I remember sitting in my kitchen reading this letter, just kind of crying, because the words that I really read was, dear Shane, I've removed your hurdles, your obstacles, and your excuses. Just go love people, love God. And so then I applied, and they said yes. And, and that's kind of how it started. It's not been an easy road, and, it's not super profitable, but I'm loving people, and I I think I found my calling. If I could just figure out how to make that financial, that'd be even better. But really, I don't. I'm happy. You know, I do what I love.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. So that's the beginning of what we know today as the Squires program. So where did the name come from, Squires? What were you thinking when you first created the program?
Oh my goodness, I can't even. All the different names that came, like I'm trying to figure out a logo and all these things. I was like, I don't. It was so tough. It was probably one of the hardest pieces when I was putting this proposal together for unemployment, was the name of the program. And then I was literally watching Sword in the Stone, right? And you know, he pulls this big sword out of the stone, right? And he can't even carry it. He's got this huge responsibility, and he can't even carry it. And he's like drags behind him, but he's the king, right? He's now, hail King Arthur, long live the king. And he has no idea what to do with the responsibility. Um, and I was like, yeah, that's teen fathering right there. But he had Merlin there, right, to kind of help him through. And it just kind of got me thinking that knights. And then I was like, knights. And then I started doing some research about how that all works. And like in medieval times, first you were a page, then you were a squire, and then you became a knight. And how you become a knight is you were trained by you were a page and then a squire, right? And you, by the time you were a knight, you've been trained by honorable men, right? About love, honor, courage, country, all of it. So I was just like, oh my gosh, that fits. That's so perfect, right? And actually, kind of an interesting piece to it all, because since we've talked last, we've actually created a program now where we actually have knights. Like Andrew is actually one of our first knights. He just completed the knight program. Um, there's dads that are squires, and now we have 4 knights that have completed 5 quests to become a knight. Um, so, but yeah, that's kind of how I came up with the name. Is like it just made sense. Like, oh, you're not foreshadowing that we were going to have knights someday, but just saying it made sense because you had someone kind of standing there teaching you all those things, coming alongside you.
Thanks for sharing. So just to timestamp this, how old were you at the time that the program started, and what year was it?
So it was 9 years ago, and I'm 45 now. So 35.
So you're 36 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty remarkable that at a young age that you were thinking not just about your own family and the responsibilities that go along with it, but trying to make a difference in the lives of these young guys. So what did the first year look like? How many dads were you able to, buy sodas for?
So the first year, there was one. In fact, the first year was really rough because I had this idea, but I couldn't find any teen dads. So I started, just so I needed to practice mentoring. I was mentoring this 11-year-old kid whose dad was incarcerated just because I needed to get my feet wet. And then there was a kid at my local church that was young, that just become a young father. So I had one for probably the first 6 months. And then the youth group, because I used to do youth ministry at my church. I used to volunteer for junior high ministry for like 13 years. And the youth ministry said, Shane, we believe in you. And they hosted a bake sale and raised like $2,000. And so I decided I'm going to do a teen father workshop, because I had recently went to a father workshop. And I was like, well, this is really good, but it's way too long. And I had met a young father while I was there, and I was like, I can do this better. I understand youth brains and tensions and how to make it fun. So I hosted a teen father workshop, and The first one I used that money. I gave all the dads $40 for showing up, and I fed them, but I used that money from the bake sale to do that. And I think we had 12 register and like 9 show up to that first one. And I still had money left over. So then like 3 months later, I did another one. And this became key in building relationships and reaching out and kind of outreach. And then the next one, I think we had 15 register and we had like 12 show up. And now I'm kind of getting some attention from the local newspaper. And now I'm in a school. There's a school that's invited me to come have lunch with their dads. They have a teen father program. So at this point, by the end of a year and a half, I probably have like 10, 12 dads. And then the third workshop, we had like 24 people register, and I think it was 17 showed up. So now it's kind of blowing up a little bit. And there's only one me. And one of the crazy things about this whole thing is I thought it would be easy to find mentors. And it's not. It's actually really not. Like, I've found, I don't know a better way to say this, but it's kind of harsh, but men are cowards. They're so afraid to look stupid in front of other young men that they won't put themselves out there. And then every once in a while I find someone that wants to be a savior. I'm just like, oh, but that's not a good fit. But and I'll fall in the sword a little bit. I also am really, really busy. So training up someone to be a mentor, it's, I don't have a whole lot of time to cultivate that. We created a mentor training probably just before we did our third workshop. I did a mentor training. I had 3 guys because we got that write up in the newspaper, and some guys said, yeah, I want to do it. But none of those guys lasted. They all fizzled out within 6 months. So there's a little bit of leadership. I'll hold myself accountable on that. But there was also the common theme was like, well, I just don't think that guy likes me. Like, just show up. Just show up.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. So let's flash forward a little bit. More recently, you have created this program where guys are pages, then squires, and then they become knights. So what's that training process to move from a squire to a knight all about? And then I'd like, once we've described that, to have you introduce Andrew, and Andrew will be able to share some of his experience with us as well.
Sure. So something I've learned in this process is listen, right? I got some really good advice when I first started this program. Somebody had told me it's like the first year, 2 years, it's kind of going to be you reaching out, trying to find people. He says, and then if you get some buy-in, years like 3 through 5, they're gonna be telling you what you need, and after that, you got to figure out how to make it all work. Okay, and for some reason, that really stuck with me. Thank goodness. And so here I am. Like, this is October, started year 9. So I decided. I sat down some guys and I said, so here's my idea. I want to create this, I'm going to call it a project. I called the Night Project. And, because one of the things they were sharing is like, we have this monthly meeting called Squire's Night, and the attendance was a little bit low. And one of the dads shared with me, it's like, well, I love it when I'm here. I really love it when I'm here. However, there's nothing that makes me come, because if I miss it, I miss it. And then after I miss 2, then I feel kind of awkward about not showing up. So something that keeps me engaged, like I'm trying to achieve something. I'm like, okay. So we started on this Night Project, sat down with some dads and came up with some benchmarks. Like in the state of Oregon, you have to drive, not benchmarks, but quests. You have to drive 100 hours before you get your license. You get your permit, and then you have to drive 100 hours or take driver's ed, and then you can take your driver's test. And I thought, man, what if we did that with reading? I'm big on reading. I think it's the easiest way for you to create a positive relationship with your kids, and how they can hear your voice, not about direction and correction only, but as a soothing thing and just a fun time, and you don't have to come up with new words. So one of the quests is that you have to read to your kid for 50 hours within 6 months. Another quest is that you have to attend at least 6 of our special night project meetings, each one with a different theme. First one is that you matter. There was reading. There was financial literacy. There was chivalry. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank here. And then there was also, they had to write what it means to be a knight. So one of the quests was read 50 hours. One other one's attend the meetings. Another one is they have to do 2 parenting education classes. Another one was that they have to do 2 financial literacy classes. I always draw a blank off the top of my head what the 5th one is. Gosh, it'll pop up in my head eventually here. So they have to do all those things. And then we literally have a knighting ceremony. At the end of the knighting ceremony, they actually select who is going to be the person that knights them. So they self-select someone in their community who they respect to knight them. They get a Great Dad Challenge coin. Each one of them got one of those. I bought a sword. So we literally do a knighting ceremony. They got to go to the Fathers and Families Conference with me in LA. Andrew actually didn't get to go this time, but he's going to get to come with me this year. And they did a presentation. They got $100 to spend on whatever they wanted, $100 gift card. And they also got a family photo package. So they get to go take photos with their families, kind of a Walter Payton type page, like you need pictures of your kids. Yeah, so I don't know if I completely answered the question. I kind of rambled on there a little bit.
Yeah, well, I love what you're talking about, that it's not just, attend a couple meetings and we'll make you a knight. There's actually some substance to the program. There's some educational steps involved, right? The dad has to apply himself and he has to interact with his child, and there's a formality to it. And from your lips to God's ears, I'm hoping that while Andrew might be one of the first dads or the first 4 dads to go through the knighting program, it would be great that as many guys that go through the Squires program, right, the young teen fathers that you're coming in contact with, that each of them might be inspired, right, to turn the corner and start investing in some other young dads, right, to help pick them up, right, so that there's some continuity to the work that you're doing. So it's not just you impact these young guys and they go off and maybe you never hear from them, but you'd like for as many of them that stay in the local community, right, to be engaged in the program and be like the alumni of the work that you're doing, right? And I think it's a very creative way that you've sort of designed things. So if you'll allow me, Shane, I'd like to ask Andrew to introduce himself. Where were you born, where you were raised, and what were the circumstances initially that you became a father?
Yeah, so I'm Andrew Martinez, and I was born here in Portland, Oregon. I'm an Oregon native, but my parents are from immigrants from Mexico. So, but yeah, I had my baby in 2020. She's 1 year old right now. She's 1 and 6 months, and I'm 17. I was 16 when she was born, and yeah, Shane. One day it was just I would move from school to school. High school, like Shane, had a lot of problems in different schools. so uh so yeah, I would go to this one high school here called Tired High School. That's where my main school would my first high school was. I moved out to the countryside down there to Newburgh, which is a lot of white males. So it was just kind of offsetting for me. And but yeah, then I moved up to Wilson High School, which now is named IDB Wells. But it also was a big change for me because there was a lot of African American people there, which was something I was not very used to. And I had met with my girlfriend through her cousin. Her cousin was my best friend throughout my childhood, so we would always hang out, always go to the mall, you know. And he one time through Snapchat he had posted me on his story for my birthday, which is pretty funny. And she saw me through there, and we started talking, and so yeah, and so from there we started talking, and we got together, and a year went by, and we had the baby. She got pregnant. We had the baby. I knew what I was doing, so I knew the risk that would come. And I have very strict parents, so it was something I knew what I was gonna do, and I knew that I would have to sneak out and do it. So I wasn't kind of like doing stuff behind my parents and them not knowing type of stuff. So yeah, and same for her. So it's just not me. But so we both knew what we were doing, and we both knew the consequences. So it took time. We knew for 3 months, and we told our parents. Good. They kind of suspected it at first, and we talked to our parents. And my dad is very um he's a very um how would I say, he's a very he's very manly. So it's not like he would have like passed it on lightly. I got um yelled at, I got threatened. I got um I is I lived a month of torture from my parents, but they kind of accepted it because in our Mexican culture, it's kind of like that's not normal, but it's more frequent it's happening. So it's more accepting, because especially like in the Mexican culture, there's a lot of young parents. So it's kind of tradition, not tradition, but culture, wise. So they were also young parents at it. They were young teen parents. They were 15 when they had me. So they kind of had an understanding of why it happened and how. But my dad, he didn't want that for me at first, but he's the one who made me a man. He always forces me to push on and go beyond my limits. So but yeah, after a while, when I got there to Wilson High School, uh my girlfriend had told me, oh, I go to this program that they do at school for teen parents. And I was like, oh, okay. And so when I got there, um I don't think the first meeting I went to, I don't think I had met Shane, but the second meeting they introduced me to him. And honestly, I'm a very shy person when it comes up to meeting new people. Like right now, honestly, right now I am shaking. but um but meeting Shane just was different from meeting any other person. I knew from the start that he was there to help me and there to be there for me. I knew what his intentions were, to try to drag me into some type of club, but later on I kind of got a connection with him. And so yeah, So now I know if Shane's there, if I have something that I'm dealing with, I could go to Shane, and Shane will be there for me or respond for me. And like, I mean, I appreciate Shane so much that he he's he goes far enough to drop me off my school supplies at home from his. He comes from his house to my house to come drop me off, to come drop my school work off. So I'm very appreciative of that. But yeah, uh, the first meetings were kind of rough because honestly, I would not want to talk, and how Shane said it. I was like, I don't know if he likes me or not. Um, I didn't know if he liked my personality. I did not. I was shy, and little by little, I remember he texted me, "Hey, what do you want for food?" And I was like, "Oh, like maybe." I was like, "No, I can't because I don't got no money on me." And he was like, "No, man, don't worry, it's on me." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And I kept on saying, "Are you sure? But are you sure?" And at the end, he ended buying me McDonald's fries for my first food received for him from him. And yeah, and from there, I kind of saw um he was putting effort to meet, like to have a kind of a connection with me. And so yeah, fast forward, my daughter was born, and he was the first one to go to the hospital, first one, and he dropped me off a shirt and a bag of candies, and and that shirt said Squires on it. And I honestly dig the shirt, man. I still wear it to this day, but at first I did not understand why. But little by little, he would drag me into being a Squires, and little by little, he dragged me into be a knight, and I'm honestly very appreciated to be a knight with him, because he's my mentor that I could trust, and if I ever had to go talk to anybody, he's there for me, man. And
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really moved by your story, and you're only 17 years old, right? Um, and you've had a lifetime of experiences, certainly the last couple of years, getting pregnant, having the child, and then being there, being present, for your child. And whether you end up getting married or not is sort of secondary, but the fact that is you've taken responsibility, and that's one of the most important things that you'll ever have a chance to do in your life, which is to be a parent. And you have a great role model, Shane is, and I think what qualifies Shane to be your mentor and a mentor to so many other people is that he's not telling you what you should do, like from a parental standpoint, do this, don't do that. But he's lived the experience, right? So he's speaking from his heart, and it's very unique that there be somebody like that in your life. And I'm hoping that not only will you become a knight like you have, but that you'll seek out others, right? That you can mentor, right? And it doesn't take a lot of time, really, but just being there for somebody, because you've had that experience. It's really fresh, and I'm so inspired. Most people who are in high school, whether they go to college or not, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? And there's a lot of challenges that teenagers have these days, and social media is a blessing and it's a curse. And to the extent that you can put your circumstances in perspective and understand what's important and what's not important, right? Because when you become a parent, you understand that there's a lot of responsibility. And I'm hoping that as the years go by, you'll strengthen your relationship with your own parents, who are now grandparents, right? If you're the oldest, right? It's not lost on me that if your parents became teen parents and you're the oldest, that they're still in their 30s, right? And they're grandparents. So they're making some adjustments themselves to becoming grandparents. And I'm hoping that you'll all have a healthy and productive experience. But I'm sort of curious to know, what, if you had to name one of the most important takeaways from the training that you've gone through to become a knight, what do you think was the most important thing that you've learned as a result of that experience?
Honestly, the most important thing I've learned during all this night project is to be there for my daughter. So I know the reading part, I felt the times I would read to my daughter, I felt like she would actually listen to me, you know, even though she's a small child, we can't control her sometimes. She likes to run away. But I felt like a connection that I haven't, like I hadn't felt before. Like um I used to, like, before I would like do all these like night projects with Shane, I would just feel like I was just there to support my daughter with financial money, you know, like with the money. I didn't feel like I was there to be like to raise a kid, you know? And um I just, like, I was just kind of in the middle, like what, how am I doing this, you know? Like I just felt I had many like things going through my head that I couldn't um like accept. But yeah, reading to my daughter, her saying her first words, you know, from when I was reading to her, that actually happened. And so I felt like, oh wait, you know, so this is how this happens, you know. If I read to her, the more I read to her, the more um the more she can learn to talk or to do things, you know, like taller. And so yeah, I honestly think that was the like a connection that Shane like taught me from all this.
That's fabulous. Thank you for sharing, Andrew. And I'm just going to share another insight. I've been advocating for father involvement now for literally 25 years. So shockingly, 8 years more than you've been on the planet. And it was a result of when our fifth child was born, I was looking for fatherhood resources and didn't find what I was looking for, but felt compelled to do something about this challenge that we have in the United States. There's some 24 million kids that are growing up in father absent homes, and it literally translates to 4 out of every 10 in America. So one of the things that we did was we partnered with the school system, and we got the kids writing about their dads, stepdads, granddads, and father figures. And if I had to name one takeaway from my last 25 years of advocacy, the most important thing a father can do is to be actively involved in the education of this child, which starts with some of the steps that you've described, which are reading to your child, right? And as they go through preschool and then kindergarten and first grade, et cetera, is to be as active a parent as you can. Don't let the mom be the one that's in charge of all that. I mean, I'm not to suggest that she shouldn't be. Mom should be actively involved too. But for the most part, the moms are already there. And you have to make an extra effort as a dad to be actively involved in your child's education. And it's not a silver bullet, but all the research supports that when both parents are involved, which means how do we get the dads involved like yourself, all the educational outcomes go up. And a lot of the things that are holding these young children and families back, which include drug and alcohol abuse, crime and incarceration, teen suicide, and pregnancy, all those things go down because both parents were actively involved in their child's education. So what I'd love to do is circle back a couple years down the road, do an update on the Squires program. And Andrew, have you tell us what your experience has been like, not only as a young dad, but also the role that you've played as a knight within the Squires program. So thanks again for being with us. I really appreciate it. So Shane, did you want to say anything else before we put a wrap on tonight's program?
One, I did remember what the other quest is. You have to attend 2 major Squires events. So like our Squires Nights meeting, we also do a young parent fair, go on hikes, things like that. Andrew is actually, we're going to a Blazer game on Friday, so that would count because there's going to be a group of us going. And I thought I'd let you know, Kwame is also a Knight. He was one of the dads that said yes. And he chose to become a Knight, so he completed that along with two other dads, Anthony and David. David was trying to get on, but I don't think he's figured it out yet. But yeah, I think, the whole Knight project, when each dad had to write, so they had to write what it means to be a Knight, was one of their quests. And so they presented that in front of them. And what I really wanted for all of them, though, is to see in 6 months, just being intentional for 6 months, whether it be reading or financial literacy or parenting education, how much of an impact that can make. And if you just be intentional all the time, what kind of transformation can you have with your children? And that's what the whole Knight project is about. It's about intentionality. Like, if you are intentional with your kids, the sky's the limit. It really is. I learned that way too late myself. However, I'm thrilled to, encourage young fathers like Andrew to, to do that. It was so beautiful just to hear him articulate like what it was, like the reading piece, and how important, how that made an impact on him. It's 6 months. That guy, speaking of 6 months, the guy who bought me sodas was literally all my life for 6 months. Like, he popped in, I think it was October of '93, and by the time I graduated high school, I had ghosted him. Like, he didn't do anything wrong. I overshared with him and got embarrassed. And he's like, "Do you want support with that?" I'm like, "No." And then I just stopped talking to him. But the ripple effect of that guy being in my life for 6 months has created this amazing program. And so that was just someone buying me sodas, the intentionality of buying me sodas. Like, if we just put that sort of energy into raising our children, I can't wait to see what happens. And also, one more aspect of being a Knight is they actually are certified. I don't know. They're considered peer mentors. Another thing that they get a hydro flask with the Squires logo on it, so that they can always thirst to gain more information. And then they also got I call it a dad shirt, but it's a polo shirt that says Squires on it, nice collared, polo shirt, because you got to have a dad shirt.
Yeah, well, I love it. Thanks so much for being with us to share a little bit of your own backgrounds, enlighten us about the Squires program. So if somebody wants to get information about the Squires program or to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
The best way is on our website, which is squirespdx.org. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our handle is @SquiresPDX.
Excellent. We'll be sure to include those in the notes that go along with the YouTube video that's being produced for tonight's program. So Shane and Andrew, thanks again for being with us. As a reminder, this is part of a Special Fathers Network Dad Zoom call. We do these on the first and third Tuesday of every evening. We've covered now 20 plus topics this year, and there's a rich library of interviews that we've done with other dads who are mentor fathers in the network. So be sure to check out the 21st Century Dads YouTube channel and be able to subscribe, so you'll get a reminder every time a new video is posted. And as a reminder, the Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. And it's part of the 21st Century Dads Foundation. And the website is 21stcenturydads.org. So thank you again for being with us this evening. And we hope to check back in with you down the road. Yeah, so how old is your child now?
I have two kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old.
And how old are you now?
I am 25.
25. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you
Yeah.
became a dad like as a 19 or 20-year-old, if that's accurate.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was 20 when my son was born already.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with the same mom, both children with the same mom?
Yes, with the same mom. Yeah.
And did you get married or not?
No, we split up about a year and a half ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it happens. It's part of life. It's part of life.
So are you still in the same community? The kids are there close
Oh
by?
yeah. I'm definitely a hands-on father. I kind of do whatever they need. I'm there 100%. We have a good schedule when it comes to when we get them and all that kind of stuff. Set routine. Um, yeah, we co-parenting. Just we leave the personal stuff out of it and then focus on the kids.
Yeah, well, that's really important. I admire you for your commitment, and you're going to be their dad for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
And
and I mean, they're one thing I've always said is like you never know how much you can love somebody until you have kids, and phew, I live with that every day. I'm like, man, my kids are absolutely my world. They're everything to me, and you know, even though I'm not with them every day, um, they know that I'm just a call away no matter what, and I'm pretty good at like answering my phone when they call or whatever they need, or uh, when I have them, when I have my time with them, just 100% to them, and that's all they really deserve.
yeah, well, it's not lost on me that they're 5 and 3 years old. So,
Yeah,
for them to get on the phone with you, they need their mom or somebody else to help. But there will be
yeah,
a point in time where they're going to have, access to their own phones and they're going to be in direct contact with you. And it's going
yeah,
to be just as important, if not more important then. And hopefully you've built a good relationship with them, like you've started out, like you've just described. And those lines of communication can stay as open and meaningful as possible, regardless of where life takes you or takes the mother of your
yeah. I
children for
mean,
that matter.
that's kind of what our we made sure to have a long conversation about kind of how things would work out when it comes to our kids. Like I said, we leave our personal lives out of it, um, and then yeah, I mean, she knows that like whenever she needs to talk to them and I have them, she has just give me a call and I'll answer, and then vice versa. If I always ask if I want to try, and if I'm able to, I always send a message. If not, then it's always going to be later in the day or a different day. But we're always constantly sending pictures to each other about like just from the kids, making sure like if I'm doing like a fun activity with them, then I'll like make sure to like record some videos or take pictures and then send them, and then vice versa. Like if she's doing some fun stuff with them, then same, she'll take pictures and videos and send them to me. Kind
I
of
love
just
that.
we're keeping each other in the loop, even though we're not in each other's lives. We're still trying to make the other parent uh, feel like they're still there, even though obviously they're in a different spot.
Yeah. Well, I really admire you for your commitment to your family and the intentionality of staying in contact and perpetuating a positive relationship with the mother of your children. So
Yeah, I appreciate that.